Hey, glory to Jesus Christ. Glory forever. How's everybody doing? Happy Monday. Happy Monday. I hope you can hear me. Computer says you can. And now you can see me. Yeah, see, I don't want to spread any viruses. What, viruses can't go through the computer? Yeah, they can. Viruses go through the computer. Yeah, you haven't heard that? Viruses go through, you need antivirus. Yeah, so, I could have symptoms, no symptoms, and I could have a virus. Computers can get virus. They can spread from one computer to another. And, you know, I don't know if you're wearing a mask or not, but I'm wearing it for your protection, not mine. See, I've done the science. I've read all about this, so I understand how it works. Ridiculous, right? Yeah, ridiculous. That's bad science. That's not even science. That's just nonsense dressed up as nonsense. And you know what? Our world's full of that very same kind of thing. And it makes me, let me be honest with you. Sometimes it makes me smile, but at a certain point, it makes me mad. I start getting angry, and um, I'm dealing with anger the last few days. So pray for me. Yeah, pray for me, because uh, you know there are things. I have buttons, right? And did you have that toy where you wind up the monkey with the cymbals and push the button and that's what I feel like sometimes. I've got certain buttons, and I've filed a lot of them down. I've spent a lot of time, disconnecting buttons and stuff. But there are still just a couple of things, and one of them is when people speak authoritatively outside their area of training, and it drives me crazy, especially because of what I do. It drives me crazy when people who have religious or academic authority do this. And man, it's all over the place. I'm gonna have to get off social media, or else I'm losing respect for people. I love them, but I'm losing respect. There's a book that Coulter wrote, Shut Up and Sing, right? And I never read it, but it's got a funny title, right? Shut Up and Sing, where because our entertainment industry, you know, used to be full of celebrities speaking about stuff, right? And they're awesome actors. And here we are, you know. And it's so powerful that you even had a commercial where you had this guy dressed up as a doctor, and he actually says, "I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV." And then he gives a pitch, and you're like, "What? How is this not a parody?" Well, it's not a parody because authority travels, right? And the accoutrements of authority travel, and even outside of areas of expertise. And so we have to be very careful when we have authority in one domain, because it's everyone, especially when it comes to our favorite subjects: politics, religion, economics. Right? These are three where your average person has very strong opinions, and because of the way we're wired, opinions and expertise are correlated in our ego. I have a very strong opinion, therefore I have very great expertise. Right? That's the way we're wired. And and some people have earned that expertise. They've actually spent the time studying theology or being a pastor or something like that. And when they're speaking within that domain, and they've actually done the serious work, like a social scientist, right? There's a certain procedure you go through of setting up hypotheses, doing an objective literature review, testing hypotheses, and so on, gathering data. All of these things have specific procedures for it to be done well. It's all transparent, and then you present it to the community, and they criticize it, they try to replicate it, and then the scientific process continues. That's awesome. Very good at that. We were accomplished at that. And there are the same, there's a similar process for theology, right? We don't just say, oh, God gave me this revelation, right? Or I read scripture and I came up with this interpretation. No, we objectively, we study the mind of the church, We submit ourselves up to it, and then, pastorally, we try to figure out what that means for us now. And so we have a process that's transparent. We say, well, this is where I got to where I'm going, and we submit this process and our approach to our, to the church, um, and then they either ratify it or don't, unless you're creating a cult, and then you just do it locally and you adjust to what works so you can manipulate people and get them to do your will. That's not the way the church is set up, though. And and so, and theologians, pastors, are, this is a process, right? It's a process that we call discernment. And, you know, within that realm, yeah, great. Speak to me. Talk to me about how to find peace, how to be a better husband to my wife, or something like that, right? And economics, it has its own procedure, right? It's a social science. It's the dark science, right? And it's based not just on ideas, not just on feelings, but on hypotheses and testing hypotheses with real data, right? What works? What doesn't work? And it can't, feelings can't enter into it. It can determine what hypotheses you want to test, what kind of outcome you would like to work towards, but you can't change based on your feelings how people react to an incentive structure. Right? I mean, you can as a pastor. That's what we're working at, right? We're trying to make people so that they do good no matter what the circumstances are. That's the goal, right? But you can't design a system around that expectation, right? And so the genius of our civilization, of our Western civilization. Hey, good morning, Brett. Good to see you, brother. So the genius of our system in the West, and it really is genius. I mean, we constantly tweaking it, always have to. But it has brought more freedom and prosperity, not just to us. It's not something that we hoard. It's something that we naturally share. We brought more, this system has brought more freedom and prosperity to the world than has ever been seen, right? Here in America, before the coronavirus, we were at the lowest unemployment that you can practically get without some tweaking, right? So what we call, the natural level of unemployment. So like, what was it, like 3 or 4%? Okay, so what that means is that our economy was set up. Remember, the economy is the way of distributing um, needs, what people need to them, what people want to them, giving them the ability, in our case, to, you want something? Okay, here's the capital market, okay, and it's open, and you go, and based on your incentive structure, you figure out the best way to make the money that you want so you can get what you need and want. And our economy was so good at that, that we were lifting up not just ourselves, but the world with this system based on freedom. And yeah, does it have problems? Yes, it has problems. It has negative externalities that you tweak, right? Here's what makes me mad. Two things make me mad. One is people who haven't studied this system and don't understand how incentives operate through institutions and how manipulating institutions and incentive structures can not just change the system, not just tweak the system, but completely undermine it, right? That it's a serious system of investigation. It's not something you come out, oh, I thought deeply about this. Yeah, great. Yeah, you and my uncle. Yeah, and he talks about it every Thanksgiving. There are people who actually, this is their field of study. They've developed expertise in it. Open yourself. Well, anyways. So when we speak outside of our areas of expertise and we use our authority, so when academics speak about something like religion, they say such stupid things. You're like, oh, bless your heart. And when theologians say stuff about economics, you're like, oh, gosh, bless your heart. Because it's virtue based, and I acknowledge that and I value that, but without an understanding of the way that um, do-goodism can create all kinds of nasty effects, and by nasty effects I mean hunger, I mean unemployment, I mean all kinds of terrible, terrible things. So just please, just be careful. Just be careful. Um, yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things that makes me angry about this is just people saying stupid. And in social media, see, and if some of these people are my friends, academics and theologians, and if we were together, I'd just say, oh, man, that's you understand that what you said was just ignorant, right? And then you'd have a conversation, and you'd agree to disagree or whatever. Um, but now, if you respond, you got this little text place, right? And you respond, and then it always it goes sideways, right? And because it's not because ego, it's a narcissistic medium, and so it's not a place for discussion. It's not set up for discussion. There are none of the social cues and so on, and also the isolation required for the vulnerability. In order for a serious discussion to take place, there has to be openness, which means there has to be vulnerability. Vulnerability on social media is insane, right? So, anyways, it's just it's a feelings-based narcissistic medium. That's the way the incentives are set up. Um, and so I think my days on social media are numbered. Uh, I just it's a waste of time for me. So that's one of the things that makes me mad is when people use their authority to speak outside their areas of expertise without humility. Or seemingly, and see, even there, I'm acting like I can read the mind. The statement lacks humility. The person probably has humility, but the medium is set up so that there's no way to build that in. Um, whereas in real normal conversation, it's always there. So I'm done. I'm done. The other thing that makes me mad is the way that, if you play Jenga, Jenga is just, it's a fun game, right? So you have these blocks set up, and it's a stable. It's stable. It's beautiful. It looks, nice and square. Ooh, like like the obelisk, right? Or whatever it is at 2001, right? And then the game is you start pulling one by one. You start pulling them out, right? And you kind of look and you say, "Oh man, I think that it can handle it if I pull this one out, right?" And then you start to move it, and the thing starts to turn. You're like, "Well," right? And we have a natural sense, all of us, because we grew up in a world with gravity. We understand how gravity works. We understand intuitively how friction works, and our understanding is well developed. This is something that we honestly are experts in: gravity and friction. it defines our interaction with the world 24/7, right? So Jenga, we're actually it's set up so that somebody loses, but we're actually very good at it, right? We yeah, we get it. We get the risk involved with pulling each one of these things out, but we don't have the same instincts. We don't have the same we have the same feelings, we have the same attitude towards our expertise because remember, our ego conflates our feelings with expertise, right? And the larger the ego and the larger the feelings, the greater our sense of expertise, right? And then we're so smart that we think we've done the math, right? We think we've done the math, and it looks like we have. So I'm going to digress a little bit. So we'll get back to the Jenga game, don't worry. But how many of you are now experts on, what's it called? Hydrochloro something zone, right? It's something that we took in Afghanistan to protect us from what? Malaria, right? Brought intense dreams and whatever. I don't know if I took it, but I remember the people I was with took it. I didn't get all of the same thing everybody else did because I was sent as an individual and plugged into different units. Hydroxychloroquine. Did I get it right? Yeah. It's almost the same stuff. I drink tonic water every day because tonic water protects me from the coronavirus. You didn't know that? I read it on the internet. Anyways, everyone's now an expert on this hydroxychloroquine 19, whatever it is, right? And everyone can quote studies. They can say, "Oh, look at this, oh, no, no, for, oh, look at this, oh, no, no, against, oh, no, no, stupid, stupid," right? And no, we're not. Nobody, very few people are experts on this, right? It, what we learn when somebody preaches about hydroxychloroquine, whatever. What we learn is, what kind of websites they visit, right? That's what you learn, where they do their research, right? Actual research, if you actually wanted to know what the scientific community thought about it, you do a literature review. And you say, well, I've done the literature review. No, no, probably what you've done is you've read an article by someone who did a literature review, right? And there, there, it's to make a certain point, right? So it's not a full literature review. We don't have access. I mean, I guess I do through the university, but we don't know how to leverage access of that scientific community on things. I know how to do it within political science, within economics, and within theology. So I can take those skills and play with it, and I did it early on, right? Because I wanted to understand in how infections were spread and what the biggest risks were in the way we do things at church, right? Singing, being next to each other in pews, all this kind of stuff. But even then, I'm like, you know what? This is how I'd look it up. This is how I do an investigation in political science. But what I don't know, what I don't know, right? And so, but people are convinced they know the truth about hydroxychloroquine, right? They know, and it's not just hydroxychloroquine. It's masks. It's all kind of stuff, and it's that's why I started out with the joke, And by the way, yeah, this is the G for God, so that everything I say has the authority of the G, right? No, it's not really. It's go dogs. Uh, Although the mask I wore during liturgy yesterday, it was the official mask of the UOC USA. So I think I got extra wisdom points and liturgical performance points. So everything came out even better. I think it's a +2 bonus, the one that I got. Pretty good buff, yeah. So, anyways, back to the Jenga game. The second thing that bothers me is that this civilization um, that that has is not the default of humanity. The default of humanity, is not the noble savage of Rousseau. That was he just made that up, right? It's not the noble savage of Rousseau. Not in the post-fall, right? In the post-fall, it really is Locke. Those are the two to contrast, right? Um, Second Treatise of Government by Locke, and The Social Contract by Rousseau, and where life is, or Hobbes, right? Hobbes is the one you hear about. Life is nasty, brutish, short, whatever. But Locke actually did a better job because Hobbes says you need the Leviathan, and no, Locke says, you know what? Actually, all you need is just social contracts and limited government. Anyways, so the default is not freedom. The default really is slavery, and just the default is not prosperity and working towards prosperity. The default is, for most people, poverty and expectation of the same for future generations. The default is not the peaceful working out of differences and policies, right? That's not the default. The default is oppression. The default is oppression and trying to get enough power to kill someone else so that you can make policy if you feel strongly enough and have access to the means of violence. What we've got here, what we're creating, is something that is very powerful, but it can't be taken for granted. And so but we're taking it for granted. We're taking for granted the stability of that Jenga structure, and we're taking out pieces without regard to friction or gravity. That's that's the problem. So, for example, okay, and some of it, you know, good. Like some of the pieces need to be taken out for it to actually work better. Like, discrimination shouldn't be there because the system works better with freedom. We are more prosperous. We are a better society the more freedom we have, and the more that diversity within virtuous limits within, at least the limits. So don't do things to others that you wouldn't do to have done to you, right? So kind of the silver rule. Anyways, we need more freedom. We need more diversity. Um, the empowerment of everybody. Blind justice. This is so to the extent that our system has pieces that don't allow that, we do need to take them out. And playing with police, changing the way policing is done. We're running experiments right now. That's the way it's meant to work. It's messy, but that's okay. Let me talk about what are some of those pieces? Well, uh, one of the pieces that we've taken out is marriage. Who needs that? Who needs marriage? And here you may think I'm talking about gay marriage. No, no, I'm not. We lost this before. No, this is one of the we have not found a functional equivalent, a functional replacement for the good that the nuclear family does for society. So we've taken it away, and there's nothing to take its place. Um, you know, as Hillary Clinton said, you can try to set up a village to raise the children, but not necessarily all that effective. At least we haven't figured it out yet. And as a Christian, I believe that the family is not just convenient or useful, it's critical. It's critical. It is the home church. It is the icon of the kingdom. It's all these things. And so if we take out that piece, and we have, right? Um, Children are meant to be reared in a stable, healthy family. We've removed the cultural support for healthy families. So the act of having a healthy family is countercultural. Let me say that again. The act of having a healthy, stable family is countercultural. Okay, Jenga piece. Don't need it anymore. Okay, so now, can you just force it back in? So that's one of the things that people say, oh, well, if you really want to help, equality across races, right? So here, there's only one human race. There's a human race. So if you want to help the problem, conservatives will say, just bring marriage back to the African American communities, right? Because it is low, and children born out of wedlock, it's around 50% or maybe higher. Um, and that's not healthy for civilization. But you can't just put it back. You can't then just create a system of incentives that you pay people basically to get married. Um, or if you do, it's going to take a generation or two for those marriages to be healthy, right? Because we've removed the supports. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Another thing. So I'm speaking about my anger here. Remember, Jenga being pulled out. What we're doing to our boys and girls. So I just read and listened to interviews with authors about a couple of sets of research. One is around this idea of the war against boys, right? And about how our education system is emasculating our men, and it's setting up a system that does not allow our boys to grow into healthy men, right? And as a result, and it's as a result, you get fewer and fewer proportionally men wanting to go on to college. Um, and now the differences are substantially and statistically significant, right? The outcomes for boys in our education system have declined. Thank God that we're doing more for our women. But this is the thing that really made me mad, is reading and listening to interviews about um, around sudden onset gender dysphoria, yeah. So the original article came out of Brown University. So I said, look, within these friends groups, you're getting huge incidences of sudden onset gender dysphoria among girls, meaning that all of a sudden within friend groups, you'll get one person and it'll just spread through the friend group of adolescent girls who are uncomfortable in their bodies, right? So it's a contagion, right? It's a contagion effect. And it isn't, you know, natural. And here I'm not speaking morally or theologically. I'm just speaking about, you know, the natural rate is very low, and it's mostly men who have this, you know, medically recognized, you know, I don't know what to call it, syndrome. Um, but come to find out, there's a whole industry set up to identify. It's like a cult. It identifies vulnerable girls and then brings them into this isolated cult online, um, that takes their uncertainty, that takes their angst, that takes their discomfort, and it gives it a name and it gives it a direction, right? And this is what, you know, this is what evangelists do, right? We should be preaching the gospel, right? That's the answer to the angst. And it's a set piece. And so by the time parents find out about it, and they say, you know, so the girl comes and says, I'm a, you know, they don't say I'm gender dysphoric. They say, I'm, I'm stuck in a woman's body. I'm a man. Um, you know, the responses are set up. It's like one of those chess games that's already predetermined. So the parents say, you know, either accepting or various things of why don't we wait and see, or let's talk about this. So you move, and the counter moves have already been programmed in by that cult. So it's not a healthy dynamic, and it's leading to negative outcomes, um, and that just makes me very angry. So how do we deal with our anger? How do I deal with my anger against, you know, when, and it's my anger, it's not their fault. People are just being people on the internet. um, how do I deal with my anger about that? How do I deal with my anger about the Jenga game being played with civilization? Prayer. That's what I have to do. So let's pray together. We're already 30 minutes into the show. It's time for us to say our Jesus prayer together. You ready? Breathe in slowly. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, pause. Breathe out slowly. Have mercy on me, a sinner. Pause. Breathe in slowly. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, pause. Breathe out slowly. Have mercy on me, a sinner. Pause. Breathe in slowly. Last time together. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, pause. Breathe out slowly. Have mercy on me, a sinner. Pause. Okay. Yeah, so thanks. Thanks for that. And thanks for your prayers. Thanks for your witness. Um, yeah, and so look, when I say that I'm angry, this is something, learn about yourself, right? Take time figuring out what it is that's going sideways, what's going right, and so on in your life, right? Spend time getting to know how you react to things. And that'll allow you to be a better human being. So I know what things set me off. And so, you know, if you're an alcoholic, don't go hang out at bars, right? So, you know, that means that I, by definition, need to spend less time in Facebook, because becoming more mature, that's the process. But Facebook is not set up for my constitution, my gifts, my limits. Face to face is, and small groups face to face are where I thrive. And right now, you know, I'm completely alienated from that. So, hey, we'll come back to this. I want to talk, if we have time today, more about freedom and diversity and prosperity and how those go together, right? How they go together. And here's where we're going to go. You know, if someone said to you, because there are downsides with civilization. Remember, I study this, okay? I mean, I can't tell you how many thousands of hours I've spent in conversation with the most learned people in the world about these subjects, where you've paid them to just so that they'll allow you to ask questions, and they'll give you the best readings, and you get to follow up. It's called graduate school. Um, if somebody said, look, here's the thing, we can set up a system. It'll maximize liberty. Some people will use it for license. It will bring about prosperity. It will raise up the maximum people out of poverty and into potential. But as a side effect, it will also create a huge inequalities, right? Some people, so it'll bring everyone up higher, but some people it will bring just catastrophically high. It'll be just ridiculous how rich they get. Is that okay? Is that okay? I mean, it's not zero sum, so it's not like they're taking anything. Remember, everybody's being brought up, right? So it's not zero sum. They're not stealing from anybody. They're just benefiting more, but everybody benefits. Is that okay? Um, and you might be like, well, yeah, what's behind door number 2 and 3? And then we show you and you say, well, here are the other ways, that are possible, that work with real human beings. And you find out, well, you know what? None of them are as good at bringing about freedom and alleviating people out of poverty and bringing, moving towards enough prosperity where people honestly have the kind of dignity that they should. And as St. Paul writes to Timothy, it's set up so that we might, in that freedom and prosperity, pursue perfection, right? Um, would you buy into that system? And I think most people would say, yeah, that's a consequence that I can live with. Some people. So you mean some like in the church, we're going to set up a system where some people are going to everyone can be saved. Everyone, everyone can be saved, but some are going to become really, really holy. I mean, just ridiculous holy, like so holy that like they float off the ground and they give off light. Are you okay with that? If like everyone's saved, but some people, you'd be like, yeah, yeah, give me Christ, give me some of that Jesus. Now it's different because one's moral and spiritual, and the other one's, seems mundane. But it's funny when you look at it that right way, right? But come to find out, our psychology is such that relative gains matter to us psychologically more than absolute. Um, so it's bizarre. Our psychology is bizarre. So it really is. I mean, what else can it be but ego, right? Ah. Anyways, it doesn't have to just be ego. Yeah. Oh man, it can also be the sweat from your glass. So here's what I want to talk about. Though that's I just finished my job, my summer job. So I've been moving furniture this summer, and I want to share some of the lessons of this experience, right? And because I sometimes get long-winded, let me share the most important lesson first. So this is a lesson. I worked at Charles Furniture, and it was thanks to, I'd been looking for a job. I've been striking out. Walmart wouldn't hire me. Tractor Supply wouldn't hire me. I couldn't get anybody to give me a second look, much less the professional jobs that I applied for. Couldn't get a job as a chaplain, all this stuff. And so somebody said, "Oh, the place I work is hiring somebody at church." I said, "Somebody, my work is hiring. Why don't you apply?" And she actually gave me the phone and said, "Here's the manager." And I said, "Yeah, I can come in next Tuesday and interview." And I showed up and I started work the next week. Um, and the most important lesson, so let me start with that. The most important is, did you know that all lazy boys for 100 years, in almost all reclining chairs, the backs come off? You thought you were going to get a spiritual lesson. It is a spiritual lesson, because if you've moved, and if you've moved as many times as we have, and if you've moved a reclining chair, you know the spiritual damage that does. You know the level of temptations that brings in the midst of stress, right? And you just don't need that kind of stress. So here's the thing, the backs come off, right? So what you do is you lean it forward, have somebody hold it for you, and typically that bottom section of fabric flips up. And you can look for the device. On Lazy Boys, it's a lever on each side. And you just pull the lever up. You might need a screwdriver. You open it, and then it just pulls off. There are different mechanisms on different types of cheers, but it's there, right? So all those years that I moved this huge reclining chair by like turning it sideways and trying to negotiate it in these small hallways and through these doorways and just, just wanting to break it into a little kindling, right? All those years I could have just, yeah. So there's lesson number one. Lesson number two comes along with that. It's just the joy of being around people who know their job well. And this is something we've celebrated before. We brought Father Theophan on to talk about the beauty of craft, right? And things done well. And it's true for everything. If you're going to do something, figure out how to do it well. And I was working with someone who had been doing his job, warehouse manager and mover, furniture mover, for like over 20 years, right? But he wasn't just doing it, right? He wasn't just, picking stuff up and moving them and putting on trucks. He was figuring out a way, because he was getting older, right? He was older than I am, right? So that it's sustainable, so that he wouldn't blow out his back, so that the people he was working with wouldn't get hurt, so that stuff didn't get damaged. So try to figure out the way to do everything well. And and so you just watch him and soak it up, and you could notice that there's a certain place that he puts his hand on certain kinds of furniture and certain ways we turn it and all this. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And that's really cool. And it was a nice reminder that this is true everywhere. It's true in everything, because most people wouldn't think of moving furniture as a skilled craft, right? Well, it is if you're dedicated to virtue. And Tony would never define himself as that, right? He'd say, no, I just don't want to do it the hard way, right? But there's a beauty in that kind of intentionality, and that's awesome, right? And so that moves me to another part of this. This has been very good. This whole process over the last year has been awesome for me in a very specific way, and that is humility. Um, because of the size of my ego and because of the success I've had as a priest and at seminary as a teacher, there it just your ego can go unchecked, right? Because you dress somebody up and people pay attention to everything that they do and say, right? What does that do? There's a huge temptation for ego. And of course, in daily prayer and through confession and repentance, you and keeping it on your radar, you keep an eye on it, you try to keep it down. But until your ego is really tested and challenged, um, it's hard to know. And you get those in regular priestly service when a parishioner challenges you or comes up with a new theology or something like that. Um, there are constant ways to test your humility, and of course, if you live in a family and you've got teenagers every day, right? But so I, the whole process has been very good for me to realize just how much work there is still to do. The fact that I applied for months and now, over a year for professional jobs and haven't gotten any interviews. I got two professional interviews. One was for a chaplain residency and one was for the one that I have. And I got a 5-year paid graduate assistantship for the PhD program, right? Um, but that's, two out of, 50 to 100 things that I've applied for. Awesome. Awesome for my ego. And then, when, all of a sudden it was summer was coming up and nobody was hiring and coronavirus had shut down the economy. So it shut down my ability to earn money to feed my family and make rent. Yeah? Do you understand this? Okay. I don't qualify for unemployment, right? If I did, I'd be making far more than I make as a graduate assistant, Of course, I don't make anything during the summer, far more that I can make on the local economy. But I don't, so there you go. And, that's, so that's part of the humility. And then part of it is to just starting back from scratch, right? I'm used to being, an accomplished, in this career, an accomplished priest and an accomplished professor. In my previous career, I was used to being an accomplished intelligence analyst. I mean, I got awards for the work that I did. And previously, as a PhD student, I was very accomplished. I was published. I got teaching awards. I got all this kind of stuff. Passed my generals, working on my dissertation, got articles accepted through peer review. And now the PhD program here at the University of Georgia, which is not a top 10 or 20 program, Ohio State is. They said, yeah, we'll accept you, but we're not accepting any of your work. You have to start at the beginning again. I'm like, okay. So I'm working as a teaching assistant for professors who have less experience teaching than I do. Very good. Very good for my humility. And I'm being honest. It just is. And to learn, right? To see how these people teach and learn from them. And to learn for the last 2 months from Tony about how to move furniture. And he was when he was in a good mood, he was extremely good teacher. He would just show you how to do something, or he would just do it well. And if you figured out how to do it well by watching him, that was great. But some days, I didn't sleep well, so I'd grab the wrong part of the chair, and, and that's good for my humility too. Uh, yeah. So there's that humility thing. Um, what's another thing that I learned from my time working at the furniture store? Well, another thing is that yeah, there is such a thing as uh, as white privilege, right? So this is one of those things. I'm going to do a footnote first. So I talked last week about how academia had come up with these ideas that work within that ivory tower, within that stovepipe of academia, the echo chamber, right? So we have this idea of racism. Racism is by definition an affect. It's an emotion towards, or an attitude towards, people of another race and towards your own race, an attitude that your own race is superior to another based on these categories. That's historical racism. So it has these attitudes and this affect, this emotion built into it. And academics came along over the last 20, 30 years, and they said, no, you know what? The system is racist. And this is ridiculous on its face, right? Because you're like, no, systems don't have attitudes. Systems don't have emotions, right? You understand this. Systems are just groups of rules that put together over a society that filter outcomes. You understand that, right? That's what it is. When we talk about our economy, when we talk about our political system, they're just a set of formal, informal rules that channel behavior in certain directions, right? It can have discriminatory outcomes, right, that may privilege one race or another, but there's no affect, there's no intention. People are racist, systems are not, right? This is just basic, right? It's basic philosophy and morality. You understand that, right? But it became the fact, right? And so now I'm a racist. So as a white man, I go into this class, and by definition, I'm a racist because I am the benefactor of a system. What I would say, I'm a benefactor of a system that is discriminatory in favor of my race, right? Um, so then, and you're like, no, we need to go back to the beginning. Can you please rewind 30 years so we can have a conversation before you get set in your definitions? Because your definitions are messed up. And now we're seeing that conversation being played out, right? So academia and people who studied in academia and bought into it, and not all of academia, but race studies, they come out of this and now they're making policy and they're saying, oh, you're racist, you're racist, you're racist. And people are saying, no, I'm not. I'm not racist. Look, look, I don't have any affect against anyone. I'm blind towards race. And they say, oh, that's a sign of that hides your racism. No, what it does is my color blindness can hide the fact that our system is discriminatory, and I need to work on that. But that doesn't make me a racist. So as people react to this, they're like, no, we're not racist. The system is screwed up. We need to fix it. That's different, right? And that's the conversation that's going on right now, is how to fix it. And and it's the same thing with white privilege, right? So white privilege is a system, it's a system word, right? So on average, all things being equal, whites are going to have better outcomes, right? Um, but when you start, it's a fallacy. It's a logical fallacy to say therefore every white person has has an advantage in this society. But I do, right? Because um, I had access to the internet that not everyone has access to. Poor people don't may not even know how to apply for jobs or how to interview well. That's part of my cultural skill set. I go to church, so therefore I have a social network that when they find out that I'm unemployed and need a job, will help connect me with people who are looking to hire. That's not something that everyone in society has, and especially to the extent that poverty is correlated with race, because that's the by the way that's the real problem, is the way that uh, societal breakdowns. So these communal breakdowns, they're correlated with poverty. Or another way of putting it is that wealth is correlated with social connection. It doesn't have to be that way, and there are exceptions, but in general, it's true. And race is correlated with poverty. So anyway, so all these things are tied together. But you know, I had to. I didn't want to tell anyone in my social network, look, I can't find a job. But one day I was just so frustrated as we were leaving church. I said, pray for me. I haven't been able to find a job at all. I've applied everywhere I can think of. And Marnie, one of our listeners' wives, said, we're hiring. And so, the next week I had a job. Um, so another thing that I learned though is that, you know, it's uh, $9 an hour is tough. It's tough. You have to have a pretty simple lifestyle and be willing to work two or three jobs, which I am, in order to make it on $9 an hour. Poverty is real, yeah, and the challenge of poverty is real, and we've got to do better. I don't know what the answer is. There are always, when we start tweaking policies, there are unintended consequences, and you may be familiar with the debate about debate about minimum wage, right? So one answer is we'll raise it up so that somebody can live off of minimum wage. And that's great for the people who have that minimum wage, but it also has the unintended consequence of um, increasing unemployment, at least locally, right? So so there are trade-offs, right? But we do need to build better. In my opinion, the solution is it's not zero sum. It's growth. The system once again is more freedom and diversity. So a healthy economy will allow people to exercise their gifts in a way that satisfies the needs and wants of others, right? It matches people's gifts with what other people want and need. That's what the economy does. And our economy, because of technology, the way it leverages technology, we allow even more and more freedom and specialization, right? Did you study that? Did they still teach that in high school? About one of the reasons we have such prosperity is because it allows specialization. And so you can, if you have a very special gift, right? That's this big. 100 years ago, you'd never have been able to exercise it because you couldn't identify the market, much less get that thing to the people who would want it enough to pay for it. But now, because of technology, I mean, just the ones that I know, like eBay. right? Etsy, right? You can put your stuff out there, and find the market for it. And we're going to get better and better at this. So that's the answer, is to open up the economy to more of that entrepreneurial energy, to allow people and encourage them to exercise their gifts. And it's one of those things. There's so much low-hanging fruit that we can do, and you see how it works in our churches. So in our churches, um, is that you, as a pastor and as parish leadership, you help provide opportunities for people to exercise their gifts. There is a model where you say, no, what we need is pierogi pinchers, and come and pinch pierogies, right? Everybody's not a pierogi pincher, right? A lot of us are. I love pinching pierogies. But not everybody is that. So provide other opportunities, right? And you know what? Something well done creates its own demand. It's like somebody comes and, wow, you know what? They were a librarian. Like, how in the world am I going to, what kind of, well, come to find out, something that wasn't even on your radar is something that they have the capability to provide to your community. You can set up a library and a bookstore and do it well. Anyways, so that's one of the things, and we see how in a parish where that kind of diversity of gifts, St. Paul calls us to that standard, to exercise our gifts in their diversity to the glory of God. Right? And a parish is really it's the small economy that shows the beauty of that being done well. Um, but the larger picture of it, um, we've enjoyed the prosperity that comes as a result of it, and also the freedom and the enjoyment, just the pure joy of watching people exercise their gifts well. Um, yeah, so we need more of that, and that's low hanging fruit. It's not that hard to give people the opportunity to share their gifts, to recognize and develop and share their gifts. Um, but we're not always good at it, and to the extent that our economy is shut down, it's very difficult to do that. So as we look to open up our economy, let's find ways as a society to make that more possible. Anytime that there's a crisis, it's also an opportunity. And it's not just an opportunity for, totalitarianism or whatever it is that's on your radar. It's also an opportunity for more freedom, more growth, more prosperity. And hopefully that's the way we'll head. And, that's kind of built in. So that is our DNA. That is our operating principle in America, is this idea of freedom and enabling people to exercise their gifts and allowing people the freedom to choose not just what they do but what they want. um, and it's awesome. And then to denigrate that and to just write off economy as some kind of mundane or even evil, or even idolatrous thing, it's not just disingenuous. Um, it is, um, I don't know, it's not meant to be immoral, but it is immoral, because that's not what people typically mean when they talk about the economy. It's not just jobs, it's not just being able to feed your family. It's the system that allows people to exercise their gifts to the benefit of their neighbor. And a system that does that with as much freedom as possible, and as much, and freedom requires equality of opportunity, right? So that it's blind. It doesn't discriminate based on where someone's grandparents came from. You end up with a more functioning system. So, um, yeah, and again, the church is a great example of this. Does the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the USA, the church that I serve, does it benefit Would it benefit more by restricting the priesthood just to people of Ukrainian descent? Or does it benefit also from allowing men to become priests who are not of Ukrainian descent? You know, obviously I have an opinion on this. I know that I have benefited from being allowed to become a priest in the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the USA. I believe that the church has also benefited, not just by my meager witness, but also by the witness and the activities of, Father Theophan over the last few years. So many priests. This is this is what it's set up to be, and we have to make sure that our system does allow for the maximum of freedom, so that we are not discriminating based on things that are not associated to outcome. So discriminating in the church against people based on where their ancestors came from, that's counterproductive to the mission of the church, right? Selecting people who are oriented towards virtue and selecting against people who are oriented towards vice, that's a discrimination that's useful for the church, right? So you want to screen out, your pathological narcissist, your addictive personalities and things. Um, you want to select out people who are going to do harm to the church. Um, and that's what we have to do better, as not just as a church, but as a society, is making sure that our selection mechanisms, these rules that we put in place, right, that filter outcomes, that they are really working towards the right thing. And a market will naturally do that. And you're going to see this. So if I start a business, I start a restaurant downtown, I would love to do that. Start a restaurant where I offer my favorite food. Here's the food I like to fix, right? And if I say, oh, and by the way, it's really important to me that I only use food that is harvested on Monday. This is just, it's important to me because I feel that it's important. And so as a result, I raise my costs. Another restaurant, people are going to say, well, we don't value that. We don't care about whether food was harvested on Mondays. We care about the value of the food. So you're charging more than this other person, so I'm going to go to this other person, right? It will select against me. Now, if, on the other hand, I say, I'm only using locally sourced food, right? So my food's going to be more expensive, but this is worth it. My customers will say it's either worth it or not, right? What some of our economy is doing with its wokeness is it's saying we are willing to sacrifice our efficiency for these goods, right? For these things. Um, and we decide as customers whether we agree, whether we're willing to sacrifice. Efficiency comes out as either quality of good or price or both, right? And if there's competition, that matters. So it naturally takes care of this kind of thing. And we end up not just with the people who are doing minimum possible, like let's maximize pollution, let's maximize how much we can get out of people who are working for us. No, no, if I value people getting a living wage, I'll be willing to pay more for my hamburger at a place that's paying a living wage. But that's a consumer choice, so the market can take care of that. Anyways, I'm starting to ramble. That's because I'm at the end of my hour. So thank you for helping me work my way out of my anger. Let's pray that our Jenga, our civilization, um, not only that it continues to offer a safe and prosperous place for us to pursue perfection, which means the service of our neighbor, um, and that we don't we don't jeopardize um, prosperity. And here I don't mean prosperity as in unnecessary riches. I mean our ability to bring the world out of poverty, our ability to serve our neighbor better. Let's pray that we don't jeopardize that out of um, dis- some feelings-based expertise. That's what I worry about. We have a system that will protect us from that as long as we follow it. As long as we keep the Bill of Rights in place, as long as we keep our Constitution in place, it is designed to protect us against the moods of the mob, right? This moods of the mob has always been a danger. That's the reason why Aristotle and Plato denigrated democracy. It's because the moods of the mob are so um, fickle and often so dangerous. Uh, Anyways, until next week, it's been great spending the day with you. I hope you have a great week. Godspeed.